Welcome to the Help, I Have a Narcissist in My Life podcast. I'm Laurel Slade-Waggoner. Episode 19, Narcissistic Triangulation. Recognize it and nullify its power. I want to start out, as I do in most podcasts, by saying that I mean absolutely no gender bias by the masculine tense used in this podcast with regard to the controller and abusers, and feminine tense when referring to the victims of narcissistic control and abuse. Just ease and simplicity in listening. In my counseling practice, I meet with many men and women who have been victimized by a woman's narcissistic control and abuse. Narcissistic control and abuse does not discriminate based on gender. Its occurrence is based on victim availability, regardless of the gender. Okay, on to the podcast. Individuals with narcissistic personality disorder quite often struggle with dichotomous thinking. Dichotomous thinking is polarized, black and white, all or nothing, always or never, either or thinking. Circumstances and people are viewed from a binary perspective, so there are only two outcomes. Circumstances are either perfect or ruined, right or wrong, positive or negative. People are either an asset or a liability, intelligent or stupid, good or bad, or for them or against them. Because of their dichotomous thinking, narcissistic controllers and abusers see relational alliances that their victims have with others as threatening antagonists to their end goal, which is control over their victims and or circumstances. Their perception is, if someone is for the victim, then he or she is against me or whatever I desire, which is intolerable to a narcissist. So, he must find a way to regain control by making sure that others are for him and against his victim. He accomplishes this through narcissistic triangulation. Narcissistic triangulation involves pulling another person, or many other persons, into the circumstance and their relationships with their victims. Narcissists control their victims by proxy. By proxy means by substitution. In other words, narcissistic controllers and abusers use others to elevate themselves to a position of control and or sought-after status, as well as demote and or devalue their victims via this manipulative triangulation of others. They want others to think the way that they think about their victims and about themselves. They want others to think that the victims are bad and that they are good. Narcissists attempt triangulation either overtly or covertly. Overt narcissistic triangulation occurs through smear campaigns and is aggressive and outright and obvious. An example of overt narcissistic triangulation would be posting something inflammatory, degrading, or deeply private on social media in order to create a negative image of the victim to many others. Another example would be, in a marriage counseling session, the narcissist brings up circumstance upon circumstance of his non-narcissistic spouse's shortcomings in an effort to hijack the session. This prevents the focus from being his control and abuse, as well as proves to the therapist how bad his spouse is and how good he is. He attempts to win the therapist over to his perceptions of his wife and the marital problems. Covert triangulation is more behind the scenes and pervasive, using subtleties to influence and manipulate others into thinking the victim is bad and the narcissist is good. Covert triangulation can manifest in two ways. One, with the usage of elusive put-downs or devaluation of their victims to others, or two, by bribing others in an effort to receive admiration and be thought of as a good or superior person. An example of covert narcissistic triangulation would be a divorced narcissistic parent repeatedly telling his children negative things about their non-narcissistic parent so that he would be the good and preferred parent in his children's eyes. In severe cases, this can lead to parental alienation for the victim. Another example of covert narcissistic triangulation would be a divorced narcissistic parent giving his children activities, food, permissions that he knows full well the non-narcissistic parent does not allow, all in an attempt to win the children over and be thought of as the good or preferred parent. This too can lead to parental alienation, as kids will naturally gravitate toward the least restrictive environment. Whether overt or covert, narcissistic triangulation is abusive to its victims. It causes its victims to doubt their sanity, their strength, their perceptions, their goodness, and their relationships. The victims start to feel powerless and believe that others believe the narcissist more than them, or prefer the narcissist over himself or herself. This can lead to a potential erosion of boundary setting on the victim's part, because the victims believe their boundaries are futile and powerless against the tactics of their narcissists. It can also lead to isolation for the victims, as they may become fearful of sharing information with others, thinking it will be used against them by their narcissists. This is exactly what the narcissists desire, to receive what they believe they are entitled to, without interference from their victims. They believe they are entitled to unlimited attention, affirmation, admiration, power, money, and or being treated as if they are special or superior. They need a narcissistic supply of these things to compensate for the intimacy and authentic relating they cannot experience due to their narcissism. So, how does one stand up to narcissistic triangulation, whether it is overt or covert? The Bible has a very strategic and effective answer. It is found in Matthew 18:15-17, which says, "If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they still refuse to listen, even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector." God is a God of process. He instructs us in the scripture to resist isolating and to keep moving up the chain of command until the narcissistic control and abuse is shut down. For example, with a social media smear campaign as discussed in the first example of overt narcissistic triangulation, the Matthew 18:15-17 process would be: first, tell the narcissist to remove the degrading material from social media. He will most likely refuse. Take screenshots of the postings and then block him from your social media. Document all of your experiences. Contact the social media platform to report the cyberbullying. You can alert the authorities if need be. Let trusted people know what is going on individually and privately. Matthew 18:15-17 lived out. Strategic and effective to stop the control and abuse. Please know, precious listener, that your narcissist's current words are not more powerful than your long-standing reputation. Those who know you and love you will not entertain or give merit to his words. And what is wildfire gossip today will be forgotten tomorrow when something more current comes along to gossip about. With regard to the other example of overt narcissistic triangulation I discussed earlier, being in a marriage counseling session with the narcissist hijacking the session and trying to win over the therapist, you can, number 1, ask the narcissistic spouse in front of the therapist to self-reflect on his contributions to the marital problems. If he tries to triangulate further, tell the therapist in front of the narcissistic spouse that you would like to suspend the marital therapy and have each of you work individually with a therapist to gain an increased relational skill set. If the marital therapy and the triangulating were to be allowed to continue, the marital therapy would then be abusive instead of productive. Thus, suspending it stops further control and abuse. With regard to covert narcissistic triangulation, remember the example of the divorced narcissistic parent repeatedly telling his children negative things about their non-narcissistic parent? In this case, the non-narcissistic parent can, number one, download Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents, they're both apps, and reduce dialoguing with the narcissistic ex to those apps. Confront the narcissistic parent on the app and ask him to stop sharing grievances, negative information with the children, and to come to you directly with any issues that need to be resolved. You can also work with the children directly and let them know that they can tell their narcissistic parent to stop saying negative things about you and that he needs to talk to you directly should he have any questions or complaints. If the narcissistic spouse continues, you can ask legal counsel to write him a letter asking him to stop. If he still will not stop, hire a parent coordinator or a guardian ad litem to advocate on behalf of the children. With regard to the other example of covert narcissistic triangulation, wherein the divorced narcissistic parent gives his children activities, food, and permissions that he knows the non-narcissistic parent does not allow in an attempt to win the children over and be thought of as the good or preferred parent, the same process can be used. Download the Our Family Wizard app or the Talking Parents app and reduce dialoguing with the narcissistic ex to the app only. Confront the narcissistic parent via the app and ask him to come up with consistent house rules for the kids with you to minimize their confusion. You can also work with the children privately to let them know why you have these rules at your house and how the rules will keep them safe and benefit them. Oftentimes, it is more productive to work with the children directly to teach them skills than to work with a narcissist. I'm actually currently writing a follow-up book to my book, Don't Let Their Crazy Make You Crazy. The second book is entitled, Don't Let Their Crazy Make Your Kids Crazy, and will go over skill building for your children in greater detail. Once again, if the narcissistic spouse continues, you can ask legal counsel to write him a letter asking him to stop. If he still won't stop, hire a parent coordinator or a guardian ad litem to advocate on behalf of your children and to plan out consistent house rules with the both of you. Having a professional to whom your narcissistic ex is accountable to gives you tremendous leverage. Matthew 18:15 through 17 is a powerful intervention strategy which stops narcissistic control and abuse dead in its tracks. Use it and see, precious listener. Healing activities. Write out Matthew 18:15 through 17 on the front of an index card. On the back of the index card, write, "There is always hope and always help." Keep this in an easily accessible place so that you can refer to it often, or better yet, memorize it. Are you currently the victim of narcissistic triangulation? If so, using the strategy outlined in Matthew 18:15 through 17, write out specific plans of action to stop each area of the narcissistic triangulation. Some power scriptures to keep in mind. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Matthew 18:15 through 17. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, who does not look to the proud, to those who turn aside to false gods. Psalm 40, verse 4. I was pushed back and about to fall, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. Psalm 118, verses 13 through 14. There is no wisdom, no insight, no plan that can succeed against the Lord. Proverbs 21, verse 30. I'd like to end with a prayer for all of you listeners. Oh, powerful Father, thank you for your holy word and all of the wisdom in it. You truly have all of the answers that we will ever need in your holy word, Lord. Help the listeners to take this knowledge and use it to see themselves and their narcissistic controllers and abusers more accurately. Help them to be protected against any and all narcissistic triangulation they may be experiencing. Give them your specific plans to render their narcissist attempts powerless. Surround each listener with your holy presence and protection. I ask all of this in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a quick rating and review on Apple Podcasts. The ratings and reviews are important as they allow others exposure to this information so that they can experience hope and help against their narcissistic control and abuse. I want to personally say thank you to all of you who have taken the time to subscribe and or rate the podcast. It helps me tremendously with writing future podcasts and books. You can email me directly at lslade4@verizon.net. That's lslade4@verizon.net with your questions or topics that you would like addressed in the upcoming podcast. As I stated in the introductory podcast, this podcast series is for you listeners, and I want to address the issues that you need addressed. I will incorporate your questions as well as information from my book, Don't Let Their Crazy Make You Crazy, into my upcoming podcasts. If you have any questions about me, my services, or would like more information on my book, Don't Let Their Crazy Make You Crazy, How to Stay Sane and Strong When the Narcissist in Your Life is Trying to Control or Abuse You, please visit my website, Slade-Waggoner That's SLADE-WAGGONER counselingservices.com. You can purchase the book in either paperback or ebook format on my website. Again, that website is Slade-Waggoner counselingservices.com. God bless.